time for another Acolyte discussion, this time episode 6. And I think we finally have a picture of where we're going to wrap this season up. So, Kevin, welcome back. It seems crazy that we're like 3/4 of the way through the Acolyte at this point.
I know. No, it is crazy. I mean, we talked about it last week, how it felt like there was a lot of time left with 3 episodes, but now with 2 episodes, we're here at the finish line. So
yeah, we're there.
I'm excited for it. I feel like the story's in a good place. I mean, this last episode really got me engaged. So
yeah,
hopefully they wrap it up.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, kind of looking back at the season, 1 and 2 were good, 3 was slow. So I almost think like 1, 2, and 3 were just kind of slow. I know they weren't, but that's how I picture the season at this point. 4 really picked up. 5, I mean, my goodness. And then 6, even though it didn't have a lot of action, they needed to focus on the story, because in 5, I mean, there wasn't a lot of story focus going on there. It was just a lot kind of eye candy for us. So not that I didn't like it. I loved it, but cool to see. So this week, what we're going to do for the episode, we're going to break down all 3 of those stories we saw. So we're going to do Qimir and Osha. We're going to see Sol and May. And then we're going to see Vernestra and what the Jedi Council, or not the Jedi Council, but kind of the Jedi response to what's going on with this. So that's our plans. And then we'll touch a little bit on where we think it's going, although a lot of that will probably bleed into the conversation. So first of all, Kevin, per the usual, scale of 1 to 10, what are you doing with this episode?
I really like this episode. I'm going to put it an 8. I thought this was the best story episode so far.
Yeah.
Honestly, up until this point, I mean, I've enjoyed the show and I've been following May and Osha, but I have been more engaged with Qimir, we now know is the stranger, Sol, these other characters, this more so than I have the 2 of them. But this episode got me more interested in where their paths are going to take them. And so I feel like it was really successful in doing that. And it really weaved a lot of just really strong Star Wars themes into this episode. Which was just really cool. I think if you took the time to watch it and think about Star Wars as a whole, you'd see a lot of connections to some of the big themes that we see throughout all of the storytelling. And so just from a story standpoint, I thought it was the best story episode so far. So I enjoyed it, and I'm excited to see where these 2 branching paths take us to the next 2 episodes.
I agree with you on the story part. It was really good. My only issue is there was just so much hopping back and forth and back and forth. And it was still it was a 38-minute runtime, so probably 34 like of actual screen time for the episode. So, and I've enjoyed the short episodes so far, but this one seemed like we needed 45 minutes to an hour, because the whole episode to me is like, as soon as you settle in with one group, you're hopping back to the other. And it was essentially like probably 12 minutes, and 10 minutes or something split amongst them. You could fact check me on that, but it just seemed like as soon as you would get in a groove, you would get out of the groove. So the pacing for me was like a little much, but as far as the rest of it goes, I thought the story was great. Like it got you what you wanted. We only have 2 episodes left, and no one was really sure where we were going after last week. So it was nice to really hone that in. I think we know, I mean, we don't know exactly where we're going, but we got a pretty good idea, I think, at this point. So I would give it a 7.75. I'm splitting 7.5 and 8. So really good. I think if it was like a 45-minute episode, I probably would have given it an 8.
And I will say, I think, to me personally, the Sol and May story seemed to suffer the most from the jumping around.
It did.
It didn't bother me at all with Osha and Qimir, but with their story, it made it feel very choppy. I felt like that was a sequence that needed to be put together more as a whole. It was hard jumping back and forth into that storyline and keep up with what was going on between those 2, because it is a little more complicated right now in that situation.
Very. And selfishly, we want more of Sol anyways. Like he's
so
great
good. This episode. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we were watching, Ashley and I were watching the other day, because like we'll sit down to watch and she might get like 15 minutes of it, and have baby stuff to do, and we'll like kind of
Yeah.
trade off. So usually she catches up later. So she was like, I think Soul may be my favorite Star Wars character because she's like
Wow.
not into it the way we are. You know, she
Yeah.
likes it, but
That's cool, though.
she's thinking that Soul, because she loves that he learned English for this role.
Yeah.
He's got those Qui-Gon vibes. Like, just he's a really cool character. So she has really liked him. And for just a casual Star Wars fan, I would say she's a casual Star Wars fan. I think it shows that the show did a pretty good job on his character.
Yeah, that's really neat. He definitely stands out from the other Jedi. There's no question about that.
Yeah. Well, we'll hop into this. He'll be our second one, but he may stand out for a few different reasons after we discuss this. We may be getting some big things dropped on us, but we'll start with Qimir and Osha. So their story, I think, was the most compelling of the three, obviously. I think that's what they were trying to do here, but he is just such an interesting bad guy because he has that component of being a villain that every villain needs. He doesn't really see himself as a villain. He sees what he's doing as good and fine, and he's just living his life, and the Jedi, from his point of view, are evil. I mean, where have we heard that before, right? So it's very cool to see that. He's just, and he may just be playing a game with her, right? Like with trying to draw Osha in. You know, some of that is probably playing the game as a character. But just the way he goes about the Force, how he views himself, how he views the light side, he makes a very compelling argument for her to join him, I think. Yeah. Probably more so than any of the other. Like Vader tells Luke, join me, we'll take over. Everyone else, join me, we'll take over. He's saying, hey, join me, you can be free of all this mess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he knows it at the time, but he's giving her a lot of, what she wants to hear, right? Yeah. I mean, we learn that she has come out of this Jedi thing feeling like a failure. And so, and part of that, if you go back to, episode, maybe it might have been the first episode, where Yord alludes to that Indara may have also had something to do with it. Like, it felt like she was no longer trainable or something, essentially.
Yeah.
And so he really is giving her the lines that she wants to hear, right? Like, no, you are good enough. You can do this. You do have strength in you. It just lies in the complete opposite of what the Jedi have taught you, right? And he's not technically lying, right? There's a lot of strength completely in wrong. Those. Yeah. There's a lot of power in those emotions. And it seems like he's really mastered it, which is he's such an interesting character because he seems he doesn't seem to be agenda driven right now. Like throughout this whole discourse with Osha, he's just like, whatever you want to do, doesn't matter to me. I'm going to keep doing my thing. You can leave. There's the ship, right? Like there's a very interesting air about him that you do wonder what is he trying to accomplish?
What's his angle?
So he's a super interesting character, man. He really sucks in the attention on screen. Yeah. So and skinny dipping, who, that's I think we were all all of us going into this show, we were like, man, I hope I get to see a dark side Force, like really crazy awesome guy fight and then go skinny
with
dipping.
No clothes.
Yeah. So
I saw a reel because he was in The Good Place. He's in that, and so it's like he goes from the good place to the bad place here because he's like taking all his clothes off. It's pretty funny, but yeah, I wasn't expecting that. But even in that scene, like just his level of not caring about anything, it's almost like a refreshing take on a character. Like, okay, he's the bad guy, but what does he really care about? Like the person who wants him dead has his lightsaber behind him, so. Does he care about anything? I don't know. I mean, by the end of the episode, we know that he does care about something. So she's asking, doesn't she pretty much just ask him, what do you want? And he says the power of 2, right? That's what he's looking for. So that's a very lore driven. Is he talking about the rule of 2?
That's a good question.
He's not in this time frame. I mean, he is not the first in this rule of 2 ordeal. So what is he? Is he the master? Is the apprentice? We all think he's the apprentice, and he's just wanting to get an acolyte to take out his master. So I'm almost thinking his power of 2, if he truly is a Sith, is he needs two to go take out his master. He needs him and an acolyte to go take the whoever his master's out. We say him. I'm assuming it's going to be some tenebrous back type character. So that's my thought on what his power of two means and kind of what he's going at. But at the same time, there's all those theories about him being a Wren. Does he even care? Like, is he just trying to get numbers? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot up in the air about what he actually is right now that we really don't have any firm indication of at this point. But I love, he makes that comment. He's talking to her. He said, I lost everything, and that was when I really became free, which is a really, really Sith thing, right? Like, not to say he's a Sith. We don't know.
I think he is, but
because that's like, especially if you go back and look at a lot of the legends and EU stuff, like the Sith, they like part of becoming a Sith Lord is like you had to make a sacrifice. Like you go back and look at Jason Solo, like he kills his aunt because that's his tie to the light, right? Like you have to sever whatever's going to pull you away from the dark side.
Well, they even they throw that in with Kylo Ren too, like as a nod to that. In 7,
he's pulled, and that's one of the cool things. And I feel like it's coming into picture now with this episode is, Leslie Headland talking about balance before the show, and that there's no good without bad, right? There's no light without dark, vice versa, whatever she said.
It's kind of a hot topic, but yeah.
I think a lot of people thought that maybe she was saying like, oh, well, you have to have the Sith for balance. But I think more what we're seeing here is like, there's not just good in a person. There's not just bad in a person, right? Yep. Like whichever side you're on, there's a pull to the other side.
Yep.
And we're basically seeing that with these two characters right now. They're on opposite sides, but it seems like they're going to start to get pulled the other direction. And we've seen it all. This is where the big Star Wars stuff comes in, is because we've seen it all throughout, right? We see Anakin pulled to the dark, but then we also see him pulled back to the light. We see numerous characters like Luke and Ezra. They feel this dark side pull. Kylo Ren feels this pull to the light. Like no matter which side you're on, there's this pull to the other side because they both they exist, right? That balance within a person. But the Sith really try to cut that out because Palpatine questions Vader. He's like, "Are you?" When they're talking about Luke, he's like, "Are you? I can sense your feelings. Are you compromised on this?"
He questions him in Kenobi as well.
He does, and so I love that even Palpatine's aware that regardless of how much Vader's done, there with these things in his life, there's always a pull back to it. So I really thought it was interesting that Qimir made that statement because he really is kind of in the perfect situation as a Sith. If he has nothing that he cares about or has ties to, there's nothing that's going to pull him back to that light. And so I thought that was a really cool thing that they inserted in there and really points to that. I don't think we're going to see any redemption for him, right? Like I think this is who he is. And I love that. I love that they've really solidified his character.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I think he's a really cool character. I think by the end of this season, he's going to end up being a throwaway character, though. I don't think we have any of him after this. So I think they can build him up that way, where there is no pullback. Like, his arc is going to be probably drawing Osha, in my opinion. We'll get to this later, but to the dark side. And she may be the one that takes him out. So it'll be interesting to see, like, if his story is just bad all the way. I would love that. There's a lot of people that complain about Star Wars always having to have the redemption arc. I mean, that's hope. That's Star Wars. I'd like to see a bad guy stay bad throughout the whole thing. I mean, even Darth Maul kind of has a soft spot there at the end. So I would like to see, I mean, not much of one, but still a little bit. So I would like to see him
something there.
Just stay bad and end bad. Kind of like Count Dooku. That's probably why we like him so much. He's just a bad dude.
I think he will. Like, I don't see any pathway where he chooses to go against this way that he's chosen. So it was interesting.
Now, he's got that scar on his back. He talks about, we learned that he was a Jedi. So there's a lot of speculation going around. I'm in a group with some friends that all make Star Wars stuff. So we all watch a lot of other people that make Star Wars stuff. And so a lot of the big theory around it is like he was Vernestra's apprentice. And some are even saying that he was like, he knows Soul when Soul says like, something's familiar about you in episode 5, like he sent something familiar. I don't think he's talking about when he was in, the second episode on whatever planet that was on. I think the thing familiar he sensed is they were probably at the temple together. They may end up being close to the same age, at least where they were both there training. So I'm thinking we're going to maybe tie this back to Vernestra, to Soul. He's got the whip mark on his back. And, Vernestra has a lightsaber that's a whip. Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if Soul gave any indication of recognizing him once his mask came off. I don't know though, because he also met him when he was
he say something to Soul though, like you don't remember me or something like that?
Something.
He says something, not Soul.
Yeah, that's right. So the question is, how long ago would it that Soul just wouldn't even remember or recognize him?
I mean, he's for sure older than Osha, I would say.
Yeah,
but Soul would be.
Listen, I had a hard time judging how old he was, so I looked up the actor's like 37, 38. Right. So I don't know if that's how old the character's supposed to be, but
they could make it work that way because Osha's supposed to be 21.
He did say though that it was a long time ago, right? I mean, so if you put him at a Padawan at 13 years old, that's a pretty long time.
So
I don't know.
Their story wraps up pretty neat though. Like they're talking about the helmet, and he's kind of tempting her with it, and he just subtly keeps bringing her in. And the episode ends with her putting that helmet on.
Yeah.
That was awesome. That closing shot, and you see like outside the helmet, she's breathing heavy, but she's embracing it, and that's when I was like, oh, she is the Acolyte. Like, and you knew it was never going to be May, I don't think, but it's cool that it's Osha. I think she is going to be bad. I hope she is. That's so interesting if she turns out to be bad.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like you can't tell me it's a coincidence that as soon as a mask goes over her head that we begin to hear heavy breathing, right?
Yeah.
That scene reminded me so much of just the Revenge of the Sith thing, where Anakin's helmet comes on and it clicks and you hear that familiar breathing. So obviously it's not the same, but I feel like there are some similarities in the way that they played that. As soon as that helmet goes on, it goes to that internal, like, deep breathing sound.
Yeah.
Which may be signifying that she's let go. She's let go of this Jedi past, this commitment to the Jedi, and she might be opening up to whatever it is that Qimir wants her to learn from him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, love Leslie Headland or hate her or whatever. She's a big prequels fan, and so a lot of stuff like that has kind of snuck its way in. So it would not surprise me at all if there's some thinking there on that. And so I just, again, the Qimir and Osha is the most interesting of this, and we will throw down some predictions at the end of this on where we think all this is going. But let's move to Soul and May. Theirs was a pretty short-lived part of the episode. It felt kind of rushed, like we said earlier. But do you know at which point that he knew it was her? Was it the whole time? Was it just at the very end there? At some point he figures out it's May instead of Osha, but very early in the episode it seems like he has no clue.
Yeah. I was thinking about it. Seems like there was a point in there where I noticed like there's no way he could have known at this point. I can't remember what it was now. But whatever that was, I think it had to have happened sometime after, like, she goes down to check on the power. Which, by the way,
that was so funny.
Basil's the real MVP here, right? I mean, man, stomps on her foot, runs off into the vent. Which
shooting her with the oil or whatever.
Yeah, did he cause the power outage, like to draw her out or draw somebody out?
He may have. Him and Pip may have done that.
They were down there where she needed to go. So I feel like he did that intentionally.
And then he hops out of that thing to fight her.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Cool. I love that.
So who knows what we'll get out of Basil in the next 2 episodes.
I hope he makes it. He's been a trooper so far. So I hope he keeps going on.
But yeah, no, it was it's I don't know when it happened, but
something clicks.
And the dynamic has become very, very interesting. I was watching it with Brittany, and she's like, "Is he bad now?" I was like, "I don't think so. I don't think he's bad, but I think he has an agenda that's far more important to him right now than following whatever orders he might get from the council. Yeah. And I think it has to do with his own feelings of absolution and cleaning his slate and all that stuff. Yeah. So it's going to be, man, this is what we talked about last week. We're like, I think we thought that May was going to get the truth out of Soul. Yeah. Not in the way that I thought it was going to happen.
She's going to, but she's
definitely going to at this point.
Yeah.
And so I think pointing ahead, we're going to get flashbacks next, right? Like whatever that looks like, whatever capacity that is, it looks like that's where we're going.
Yep. So so I've got friends, Tony with Star Wars Sith. If you've watched any of his stuff, like he has been skeptical of Soul the whole time because there's been little things just kind of thrown in there here and there that's like, man, what's Soul's deal in episode 3? Like that's it's kind of strange. And then in last episode a little bit, this episode obviously a lot. Like there's something up with him, and so we're gonna get those flashbacks. He's going to come clean because he said he had to come clean to the High Council.
High Council.
Said, right? Yeah. So he's got to go tell them that he goofed up 16 years ago and all of it is coming to roost, essentially. Like this is the culmination of what likely is what he did. So at least it seems that way. Either he did it or he covered it up. There's going to be something, but I don't think he comes out squeaky clean out of this if he feels like he's got to come clean on it. But he almost has this sense of resolve. And I don't know if it's like a sense of I'm coming clean and we're going to be good, or like I've got business I still need to take care of. I don't know what it is. So I'm very interested to see.
And I think part of it too is once he realizes this is May, he understands that Osha is with the master, with the stranger, right? And so I think, and I could be completely wrong. He may end up being the bad guy. I personally hope he doesn't. I like that his character kind of shows a little pushback, but not enough, right? Like just kind of showing that a single Jedi here and there who might not be on board with everything the council does it's not gonna change who the Jedi are becoming, right? And so I like that he's kind of fitting that part of it doesn't matter how. He could do all the right things in all the right ways, and it's not going to change who the Jedi are. And I think it's important for me, storytelling wise, it's important for him to have that role. But he could be awful. He could be evil. We'll see. But I really think right now his focus on May and Osha is more important than anything else. I think he's fine with defying the council to resolve this. I think he's fine with accepting whatever consequences may come his way. I think at this point he's like, this is enough, right? It's enough hiding from this thing. Like it's going to get settled now.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of what I saw in him at the end there. But it was odd, right? Because he became almost cold in a way, which has been very unlike him the rest of the show.
He's sitting on that couch just staring at her. Like that was weird.
So we see a little different side of him for sure. So I'm really curious to see. It makes me even more curious as to what this story is about to be.
Yeah.
Like how culpable was he and what happened, and how bad was it? Because we really don't know how bad this thing is. So
I think it's gonna be a lot of mud on him, I think.
Yeah,
and so
for sure.
let's kind of tie in the last group with Vernestra in light of this, because I think a lot of our predictions from these will kind of hinge together. So the Vernestra section, like, you know, she's still trying to cover herself. She's talking politics with someone, and it's just like the typical thing that's supposed to make the Jedi look bad. She's doing really good at it. And so she's getting herself another group. She's the Mace Windu of this whole story. Like just the really difficult. Now there's a lot of Mace Windu fans, but like Mace was written to kind of be that stalwart of the Jedi that's just like difficult and things like that. And so she's kind of written to be this annoying, putting everything under the rug and trying to just make sure all the politicians are happy. So she's written to be a Jedi, but one that frustrates you. And so she's taken her group out to Kofar, and the locals say, oh, it's the bugs or whatever. And they go out there and see all the bodies. And then they decide it's going to be, someone really strong in the Force had to do it. Yeah. Oh, it was Soul. And I'm just sitting there thinking, oh, they're so stupid. Like, but logically, it probably makes sense, right? Because they don't think there's a Sith, I guess. So they don't think May is one who could do all of this, but they're like, oh, Soul inserted himself into this mission. He's doing all these things. Is this kind of him, orchestrating all of this? So interesting that Soul is going to be the one blamed for all of this. And I think that's going to really make the storyline interesting for the next hour of television that we have.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most interesting things that came out of this episode is now going to be, now that he's basically cut and run to ignore whatever they's after. The fact that there's going to be this confrontation now, not sure what form that's going to look like, but things are now going to come to head between Vernestra and Soul, who so far have been roughly on the same page with all this. But now they're going to be coming into this from very different sides, and so that was a little ripple from this that created almost another little branching storyline that I'm really curious to see how that confrontation comes about now.
Yeah, kind of interesting they threw it out there so late, but
yeah, but I think it fits okay well though, because I don't know why it would have happened before now, right? Because they've had this common goal of just figuring out this, like, what's going on, like who's killing these Jedi. We got to figure out who it is. We're going to track them down.
Yeah,
but now Soul's gone rogue and he's headed off on his own.
It's interesting.
It doesn't seem like the type of thing. Well, and if Qimir is somehow connected with Vernestra, and she did in some way turn on him because of who he was becoming or something of that nature, that maybe she needed to hide it. I don't know.
Yeah.
What's her take going to be on a Jedi that goes rogue to try to fix a cover up that may release even more harmful things to the Jedi?
You can only cover up so many things, and something has to come to a head.
Yeah, exactly. So and that's been her goal this whole show. Cover it up. Like, let's make sure nobody hears about it. We got to do this quiet. We got to keep it under wraps. So, man, there's something coming from that. It'll be interesting to see how that goes.
What I really love about this too, and some people have complained about it because it's kind of simplistic, but a lot of what we've seen has been kind of predictable. Like Qimir being the Sith was kind of predictable, dropping the Sith code in episode 2, carrying around that big bag and knowing all the stuff about the Master, knowing that, it's going to be Osha and May. Like within a few minutes, you knew it was like, oh, they're going to try to pin it on the other, stuff like that. Like it's a mystery, but we could all kind of jump to the conclusions. And so we kind of talked about before this even came out, and we knew anything, that there would be either everyone has to die or there's a cover up. Well, it looks like both of those may happen. The way she's operating, like she keeps covering things up, and on the Sith side of things, he's like, "Hey, everybody that sees me's got to die." So it's like both of those things we kind of thought would happen anyways are both working together as we near the end of this, which I think is not that you want everything to be predictable, but the show is kind of logical, and there's only one way this story could work, and so they seem to be going in that direction.
I like it though, because at the same time we're sitting here talking about how interesting with this episode some of these plot lines have become, and we don't know what's going to come of them, right? And so as much as they've given us, right? So we knew people were going to die. We figured there'd be a cover up.
Yeah.
Everybody and their mother guessed that Qimir was the stranger at some point. And we were right about all those things, but it didn't affect his character. His character was still incredible.
Very interesting.
He's still a great villain, and it hasn't affected the plot line in terms of us being like, oh, well, now I know how this ends, right? It's just going to be XYZ and we're going to wrap up the show. I don't feel like we're at that point. And so I feel like they gave us some things that were big, but ultimately didn't really matter to whatever this story is that they're trying to tell. Now,
it's worked.
Hopefully it ends really well.
They gotta land it.
We'll see in the next 2 episodes, but I mean, right now I'm with the exception of, and we've talked about it, there's been some things that have bugged me, some weird moments with characters that I was like, that I don't know why they said that or did
clunky
that.
Clunky lines,
but overall, if you just look at the story itself, it's a very Star Wars story.
And it's going to work if they do it right. It's going to work.
I'm excited to see how it ends. So
and let's go to how we think it's going to end, because there's not a lot to touch on with the Jedi. Like she's taking another rogue mission of Jedi out to danger to cover this thing up, and so I think all 3 of these stories are going to come together, and I think it's going to be pretty cool because you're going to have Qimir and Osha. He's got his Acolyte, so they're going to be found. Maybe, I hope it's on this planet because it's a cool planet that looks like Octo, that unknown planet. So
it does look cool.
I'm hoping it stays there just because it looks cool. So I think Soul and May are going to get there. We're going to understand what Soul did. This next episode, I feel like he's going to be telling the story kind of like what's Princess Bride, where it's the guy telling the story and it cuts in and out. Like, I feel like he's going to be telling the story to her, and we're going to see the scenes.
I can see them doing the flashback that way, so it doesn't take as long.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be happening, and we probably will be able to catch up with Osha and Qimir as well. So he might be telling some stories and getting some flashbacks on the other side of things. So I think we may see something along those lines, and then they'll throw the Jedi in a few minutes. We'll figure out that they're tracking Soul. So Soul's going to be going to wherever Osha is with Qimir. Yeah. The Jedi are going to be tracking Soul. They're going to have something where they can track, like, oh, his ship is pinging or something like that. It'll just be a real easy story point that they'll throw in there. And in the last episode, well, I think in 7, we're going to learn that Vernestra was Chimir's master. That's going to be some of those flashbacks. And then in the last episode, we're going to have this showdown where Qimir's getting to face Vernestra, but Vernestra is facing Soul and Osha's facing May. And there's just going to be a lot going on in this whole like triangle of stories. And I think Osha is the only one left standing at the end. And then the real master shows up and takes Osha as the apprentice.
One of the things I'm not quite sure about yet is how Soul and Vernestra are getting to wherever Osha and Qimir are.
I think it's going to be like the twin telepathy deal. Something like that.
You think maybe? So
it's the only thing
I'm trying to think time-wise. So if Soul does his little background talk with May, and she's like, okay, we need to go get him. She obviously knows where it is. We see her there.
May. Yeah, I was going to say May knows where to go. She's going to know exactly where to go. Yeah.
Soul's just got to get her bought into it, because right now she's trying to run away from it.
No, she'll buy in. Buy in.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah.
I think they'll go through that pretty quick. I don't think that flashback's going to be an episode. Yeah. I don't know how Vernestra's going to get there.
Well, they're gonna figure something on Soul's ship. That's the only thing I can think of.
But I don't know. So it would be crazy if they show up on whatever planet this is and they're confronted by the stranger and they think it's Qimir, but it's actually Osha, and they start fighting.
Yeah, she could have the thing on, yeah. She doesn't have the gun show like he does, though.
No, that's true. So but I can see them being thrown off by that, thinking they're fighting one person and realizing it's her. I definitely think, I don't know, man. I think Osha kills Qimir.
No, so I think I'm with you there. So I think Qimir is gonna take out Vernestra, or either Soul is one of the two.
Yeah,
and then some way or the other, Soul's gonna get taken out. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Qimir takes out May. So May's trying to get Osha back. He takes her out, and in that whole situation, that gets Osha really fired up, and she takes out Qimir, and she's the last one standing.
And because one of the things I do like they've done is they didn't put her in like, I was a little worried they were going to make her and Qimir buddy. But I still feel like she doesn't like him, which is good.
No, she's not a fan.
No, she's not. And so I don't think she'd have any qualms cutting him down when the time came.
Or May might get him. I don't know.
Or the other thing is if I don't know what I was just going to say. Well, we talked about last week that Osha might also kill Soul. That might be her test of ascension to being a pupil. So I don't know. Yeah. It'll be interesting.
I don't think any of them are going to make it out except Osha. And I think the ending of this is going to be the actual master showing up on this planet. And I
feel like it's got to be at this point. I mean, as much as we've talked about it, like, that makes on the tee. A lot of sense at this point. So,
yeah.
The big question up in the air right now in these last 2 episodes is, of these, five characters, who's going to kill who? I think that's
you're wrong on the number of characters. They threw in like 4 more NPCs that are going to get taken out when they show up, because they're with Vernestra. Yeah, so they're just going to get slaughtered.
And Basil's the Acolyte. That's what it is.
I hope he makes it out.
Basil's the Sith Lord.
Darth Basil.
He's been pulling the strings all along. Yeah,
he's got. He
disabled the ship so that they couldn't communicate with the Jedi.
He's like the Darth Jar Jar of this.
Yeah, It's Basil.
That's
Basil all
so
the way.
funny. But yeah, like I think that's a logical place where this is going.
Yeah.
Everything else that's happened has been kind of the logical next step so far. I don't see why the next 2 episodes won't be. So I'm really excited to see it. Hope maybe we get a little bit more runtime to close this out, just because I think there's a little bit that needs to be explained. But
I think the next couple episodes definitely need to be longer.
Yeah, like 40, 45.
To flesh
I'm excited though.
Out, so I am too.
Yes,
I think it'll be really interesting when they come back together, because yesterday, what's today? Wednesday.
Yeah, yesterday.
Yesterday we saw, like what the dark or the light, what's pulled out of you really depends on who's talking to you, right? Like who's convincing you and who's manipulating you. So
there's going to be a lot of those, that too.
It'll be interesting once both those voices are present. Once Soul and Qimir are both there, who are May and Osha going to be listening to?
Plus, Vernestra spewing the lies of the Jedi.
Yeah, man, it'll be interesting to see how they are pulled between all that stuff.
Yeah.
This is the most interested I've been in them the whole series. So
yeah, no, I'm after last night, like the episode 5-6 combo. Yeah. I'm really excited to see how they're going to end it, and I think we're gonna have the action, kind of the drama, plus a big reveal. I think we're getting all of that, so that's going to be awesome.
I think so.
And if not, and we're disappointed, we will let you know as well.
Yeah, yeah. I hope that's not the case, but we'll be honest.
Yep. So that's a wrap on this week's episode. A lot of fun. I think next week when we get to make our finale predictions, we always have our series finale prediction episode. So we'll break down a little bit of episode 7. But if there's a lot to talk about, we'll talk a lot. But mainly next week, we're going to be like, how are they going to wrap this thing up? It's one of my favorite podcasts that we do for all of these, is when we're trying to guess what's going to happen at the finale. So should be a lot of fun. Thank you guys for joining us today, and we'll catch you next time.